Salman, my name is Beatrix, and I'm really interested in sustainability and the world of sustainable solutions. I have spent a couple of decades in education, and right now I'm looking to create more connections between education and sustainability. I'm also an industrial hemp enthusiast. I love seeing how this plant is transforming our planet. And here is a conversation I had when I interviewed a couple of UAE business owners. This is a conversation with Salman Hussein, who is the co-founder of fuse.ae, where they are transforming commercial vehicles into electric vehicles. So I'm very happy to have you, Salman, here for this podcast, and thank you so much for accepting my invite. We know each other from the Sustain UAE group, which is I would say by now a very big community focusing on sustainability, values, a bunch of like-minded individuals. And I've got very interested in your project since I first heard about you and about the project. And what really excited me is that you can turn your own car to an electric vehicle. So, you know, this is really like something that makes me ask, who is Salman Hussein is, and what's your vision for the automobile industry?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Honestly, when you talk about electric vehicles, like I've been interested in from a long time. I think I was in UK, during my studies 12, 13 years ago, and I saw, this is pre-Tesla days, I saw a little Indian electric car called a Riva, and I was fascinated by it because it looked really weird, out of place with all the other cars. And I was like, oh, this is electric. Like you can drive it without any fuel. And that's kind of what sparked my interest. But then, this was early days. And then of course, Elon Musk brought in the Tesla Roadster. And then I was, okay, this is picking up steam. And so I kind of knew about it. And I jumped ship very early in the UAE in 2016 to get an electric vehicle because I was convinced. And nobody knew what an electric vehicle was back in the day. Pre-Tesla here in the UAE for sure. And then getting that car, kind of showed me that, oh, this is a different way of doing things. It was very difficult, I'll be honest with you, charging that car. It was only go like 100 kilometers. But to see the progress that we've been making from when I bought that car to when I have my current car now, the Bolt, to what's available today, it has been an insane change. Like to have that kind of change in any industry, it's basically a total disruption. And so what I see is that this is a really great solution, and now it's being adopted as well by a lot of the manufacturers. And so the future that I see is basically one that is definitely going to have a lot more alternative fuel vehicles, electric vehicles to be a huge part of that. And then to have, kind of like a noise-free, pollution-free city, especially the city centers, which tend right now to be quite polluted. And for electric mobility to play a kind of key role. And that's kind of where I come in. So what we're trying to do is, yes, electrification is a big thing. Can everybody afford an electric car, a new one? Possibly no. I mean, right now the options are very expensive. So you're looking at vehicles that are at least between at least $30,000, which is about 30,000 dirhams minimum, and then go up from there. And so what we're trying to offer is, especially for commercial vehicles and classic cars and a couple other special sectors, solutions there where you can keep your existing vehicle running and be able to save money at the same time. And so it becomes a great proposition, not just for you to save money, but then also to go green.
Yeah, wonderful. In your words, I heard the same kind of excitement probably when the very first cars, started, they started driving them around on the streets. This is the excitement I'm getting now, except that the addition is to be mindful about the planet, mindful about nature, and mindful about sustainability in terms of finances. So we'll get back to it, I promise. But before that, I have a question for you about, is the area of sustainability in the UAE? So how is the UAE performing, in terms of electric vehicles? And how do they perform in comparison to the global market of electric vehicles?
Well, so I'll say this, the UAE as a country, when you compare to the rest of the globe, is doing quite well. The adoption rate has been off the charts. Like we saw in 2022, just in Dubai alone, 15,000 vehicles registered that were purely electric. And that number is increasing more and more as years go by. So you can already see the first patterns shifting towards electric mobility in UAE, specifically in like our region, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, much more than the surrounding like Saudi Arabia and stuff. Everybody is beginning to take mobility much more seriously because mobility is what, about 25 to 29% of all CO2 emissions on the planet. So tackling this one is definitely going to help a lot. But having said that, there are still challenges that definitely can be addressed, and now we see a lot of focus on that, and that is not something that's happening at the moment, but definitely the roots and the foundation of it being set this year will help us, and that's like to do with infrastructure. So a lot to do with charging stations. Like I think one of the things that we mentioned just before we started on the podcast was, how do you charge that vehicle? Can you charge it at home? Does it work if you're on a road trip? And so the network is pretty good in the UAE. I think it's one of the best in the region, but it can be better. And we need to follow a bit the model in Europe, which is very high speed charging, especially on those highways. And so that's going to really enable a whole new section of vehicles, commercial, special vehicles, all of these to then be on the road. Yeah. And so that's kind of where I think we're doing quite well, but now we need to set a path and goals for the future as well.
Right. I will stretch this concept a little bit and add into the equation the biodiesel. So in 1940s, I remember, from my readings, Henry Ford is the one who made a car using hemp plastic, and the fuel was also biodiesel. So hemp oil. And, it's really phenomenal how it could have happened, like, let's say 80 years ago. So would you see that also as being something that's similar to the electric vehicles early adopters can choose, and something that can even stretch this concept a little bit more, challenging the big petrol industry?
I think there's definitely a space there. So when I mention electrification, it's not just 100% or nothing. Usually what we're seeing now is hydrogen coming into the mix, petrol continuing to be a part of the mix, and electric vehicles. And in that sense, sustainable fuels, so as you mentioned, like hemp oil or even biodiesel of some sort, really helps out. The challenge that we have with burning any kind of fuel, whether it's biodiesel or whether it's like fossil fuel, from the ground, is that while you are still have the ability to be carbon neutral or almost carbon neutral, you will still have the NOx, all of the nitrous and sulfur emissions that will come out, because you're burning something at high temperatures. And so I think that there are solutions for that available. Modern cars have catalytic converters, and so there are solutions like that available. And certainly for long distance trucking, I don't think that petrol or any kind of this diesel is going to go away anytime soon, because hydrogen is still very much in its infancy. So I think there's definitely a place there, yeah. And it will be probably a significant part going ahead. But I would see more and more hydrogen and electrification taking over as time goes on. So it's definitely a very important role, and it will have a part, just like electrification will have the part in the future.
Right. One thing very important to be mindful of, especially when it comes to sustainability, is the pricing and the costs included. So the question is how affordable it is to have a fleet of electric vehicles for, let's say, a medium enterprise. Because for a personal level, I wouldn't ask. You mentioned it's not that easy to get hold of an electric vehicle right now, but how about a medium-sized company?
So that's the thing. So what we're trying to address now is this lower cost entry point, especially for fleets, because you have a lot of fleet operators here in the UAE, and they have their petrol trucks, vans, pickups, all of these running on either diesel or petrol. And if you want to switch those to electric, the cost to even a van is like to buy a new van is about $60,000 US. What we're doing is we're planning to come in at a price point of somewhere in the region of $25,000 to $30,000 US. So it's much cheaper than even buying a petrol version of that vehicle. And then once you have it, you have about 80% operational savings, because you're no longer paying for the maintenance or oil changes, and fuel, the electricity, is much cheaper now. So we're offering a total cost of ownership saving. And that is where I think that this technology that we have is really going to help electrification.
I'm very excited about this. And I'm looking forward to see many medium, bigger enterprises, companies, not only in the UAE, but worldwide, adopting it and be jumping in the queue to be early adopters. So I think it's a very, it's a very green, very nice future that you just described to us using electric vehicles. Definitely. One last question I have for you is about drivers. Would you like to share a couple of reminders that you would like drivers who care about the planet, care about the environment to remember?
I think the simple ones are the best. So there's something you can do right now without having to do anything at all, no change. Is just to drive a little bit slower. So if you drive a bit slower, it's known that, especially in the UAE, driving at highway speeds, 140, that takes actually a lot more fuel compared to the distance that you're doing than if you were to, let's say, cut back by 20 or 30%. Being light-footed on the pedal, which means driving a bit, slowly driving, slowly accelerating, that itself can save up to half the fuel. And that's an immediate saving that you can do just by a change of habit without spending any money whatsoever. That's the easiest one. And the second one I would say is if you have a fuel-efficient car, if you have a small car or a medium-sized car, and it does exactly the duty that you need, keep it. Because the best thing you can do is to not go out there and buy a new electric vehicle which is going to be manufactured, which has all these carbon emissions embedded into it, and then you need to drive it a lot to be able to justify it. So unless you know you're doing a lot of kilometers, it possibly makes sense to actually hold on to the vehicle that you have. And lastly, yes, of course, if you do a lot of mileage, if you are having a large car, it makes sense to go electric. Look at the options that are out there. Certainly look for electrification through us, if that's one of the options that's available to you. But there are many options out in the market now. So it's good to kind of have that idea in mind and go from there.
Thank you so much. I love those reminders. Really, I was thinking of me driving a lot and on my habits, and really a small habit change can make a big difference. It was a pleasure having you, Salman.
No,
and
likewise.
I hope we continue this conversation after the podcast.
Likewise. Thank you for inviting me.
So thank you for listening to me and Salman, having a conversation about electric vehicles. Hopefully I got some great insights out of it. And in the next episode, I'm going to interview Karen, who is the founder of the Story Group, which is a management consultancy combining logic, magic with passion.